Hello and welcome again to another video where I provide you answers to difficult job interview questions and also try to give you some background information about the questions. Well, today I'm going to tell you about 4 things that you should never be mentioning in an interview. While I always tell you about the importance of practicing your answers before the interview, today I will tell you about 4 things that you must avoid saying during the interview. And I will start off by mentioning the most important thing to avoid, which is never to say anything negative about your previous companies, your bosses, or your ex-colleagues, even if in reality you may have suffered a very bad experience. The interview is just not the right place to use negative language. Having said that, you may face a question where the interviewer asks you directly to tell him about any negative experience that you may have had so far in your career. In which case, you need to be diplomatic in answering this question. Here is an example that you can use instead of using any negative language. I have always been fortunate to find a good work environment, friendly and cooperative colleagues, and the management being very supportive and transparent in their communication with the employees. I am usually easygoing and I always try to find the good in people and in situations. But to answer your question, I can only think of one of the companies that I worked for as a sales manager for 2 years. And although there were never any issues related to my performance, looking back, I feel there was a lack of direction from the senior sales manager related to our specific target markets. And this was something that was not only felt by me, but by the whole sales team. Although we tried to highlight it to the manager a few times, it did not improve the situation. That was the reason why some of my colleagues even left their job and moved on to other companies. Now this was an answer where you highlighted a negative situation without using any negative language. Let's move on to the second point that you should always avoid saying during an interview. The second thing that you must avoid saying in an interview is that I don't know the answer to this question. I have another video where I talk in detail about how to react and what to say in case you don't know the answer to a question. But here I would like to remind you of a few important points in case you are faced with a situation where you either don't know the answer or you're not sure of the right answer to provide. One way of tackling this situation is by asking the interviewer if you can be given a few minutes to think about the answer, as it doesn't come to your mind immediately. In most cases, the interviewer will agree, and in some cases, he might even tell you to ignore this question and move to the next question, depending on the criticality and the importance of that question. You should use this method only if you are sure that given a few minutes, you will be able to come up with a reasonably good answer. The other method to use, which is more advisable, is to mention something similar or closely related to what is asked in the question. Let me give you an example. Imagine that this is an interview for a hotel front desk officer position. And the question that you are asked is that how did you deal with a customer who arrived at the hotel without a booking when you had no rooms available? Now, in case you are not sure of how to answer this question based on your previous work experience, you can tell the interviewer that I do not recall facing such a situation, but I do remember dealing with a guest who had a confirmed booking, but he arrived at the hotel a day before his booking was scheduled. I hope you get an idea about how to present an answer that may not be exactly what you are asked in the question, but is closely related to the situation or even a job function that you're asked about. You can write to me in the comments below in case you have any specific situation or a question in mind that you would like an answer for. And now we move on to the third point of what you should avoid during an interview, and that is showing your desperation to get the job. This actually has to do with what I call psychological training, where you need to remind yourself during the interview preparation that at no stage of the interview or while answering any question would you show your desperation about being selected for this job. It may be true that you have been unemployed for a long time and you feel that not getting selected for this job would be the end of the world. But believe me, you could only be ending your own chances to get selected if you show any kind of desperation at the interview. And what do I mean by showing your desperation? One example used by many interviewers is to ask the candidate if he or she would be able to perform certain functions or tasks that are not related to the position or the job role that you have applied for. This may be a trap question to check your reaction and what you have to say in response to it. And this is where many candidates make the mistake of agreeing to perform any functions or tasks if they are selected for this job. And that is what I want you to avoid doing. The best way to handle this question is to pause for a second, think about the question, and then answer in the following manner. Although I am always on the lookout for opportunities to learn new functions and skills, I am not sure if what you have just mentioned is a requirement for this position, as the job role only relates to XYZ functions. You can even answer this question by throwing back a question at the interviewer and asking, would this function be part of my mandatory job responsibilities? Because I did not find anything related to it while going through the job description, and neither does the title of this position suggest such a function. Remember that you are at the interview to show what all you are capable of doing, and that you are willing to do anything which is in the best interest of the business. But saying things like, I am willing to do anything, does not reflect well on your integrity and your personality. The fourth point that I want to highlight you to avoid is not to ask any questions when the interviewer asks you if you have any questions for them. Speaking from my experience as an interviewer, I consider this question as a high scoring opportunity for you to impress the interviewer. If you would like to get complete examples of questions to ask the interviewer, you can click on the card showing above for one of my videos on this topic. Because asking these questions at the end of the interview will guarantee that you leave a great last impression on the interviewer. To tell you briefly, ask questions that relate to the role that you are here for. Ask about the company itself, and questions that show your interest in delivering the expectations of this role. You may even ask the interviewer for his advice on what type of skills are critical to succeed in this role. Such questions really score big on the listener and will assure you a high ranking in the selection for this job. These were some of the most important points to keep in mind to avoid during job interviews. And if there are any other points in your mind that you would like me to discuss, please write to me in the comments of this video. My channel also has a video with the 5 most commonly asked questions and answer examples that you can use for your interview practice. Until my next video, thank you again for watching, and goodbye.